And welcome. I'm about to interview author Vee James and how he turned his published books into Audibles. But first, here's a teaser of his latest book with the narrator of his book, Hannibal Hills, which I'll interview in another episode.
The Little Ship of Horrors. Written by Vee James. Narrated by Hannibal Hills.
Hi, this is Joanne with Creative Writing Study Group, and I am here with Vee James. He is the author of 4 published books. 2 of them is Neka Bashar. I had to check the pronunciation. Volume 1 and 2, and he's working on Volume 3. And he just released The Little Ship of Horrors on audiobook. All of them are on Kindle. He also has a book of short stories called Ancient World Horrors. And as I was saying before we started recording, I am not a horror reader. I have read some. Stephen King's son wrote some graphic novels I read, and I just don't like them. But I have read some of your stuff, and I was like, okay, this is the kind of horror I can handle. And at times, it's humorous, which is one of the reasons why I like your books. But
Neka Bashar is intended to be fantasy comedy.
And that's what I read,
even though it's about a demon.
I enjoy it. I haven't finished it, but I have enjoyed it. I'm actually thinking of getting the audiobook because I've only read it because I'm a slow reader, and anyone in the group knows I always say that. I can't read your stuff. I'm too slow of a reader. But so I'm thinking of getting the audiobook because you shared with me the voice actor that you got to do it, and I was floored. I was like, wow, he's reading it even better than I am. So anyway, That's why we're here today.
That's right.
I wanted to, my audience is mostly writers, and I think they would learn something from how you went through the process of making your books into audiobooks and why. So why did you decide to make your book into an audiobook?
Well, it all starts when I was a kid, and people read to me. My mother mostly read to me. And then from there, it was LPs, right? We listened to records, books on records, which became books on tape, which became books on tape, which became books on CD, which became now our current, like streaming and all this fancy stuff we've got now, which will probably be old-fashioned in 10 years or 5 years, But for me, it's always been a really great way to take in books. I love to listen to books. I've recently discovered the value of reading a book at the same time you listen, and we can actually get into that. I was studying for a professional exam, and I found that by listening to the book at the same time I was reading the text, I didn't stray. My mind didn't stray away from it because it had to keep up with the voice that was reading. And so I really had to focus. And I thought, well, why don't I try self-editing that way? And so I started listening to my own books being read by the flat, monotone computer voice. And I found that I could edit and catch mistakes very easily.
That's why I started doing it. Yes.
So incredible. Right. So when I decided to self-publish, one of my first goals was to do it as inexpensively as possible. So that's why I went with ebook only. And in the course of sort of one afternoon, I kind of decided, I think I had read an article or something about audiobooks and how, it was really not as hard as people think. So I went to the acx.com site, and ACX is the production arm of audible.com, and they're all owned by Amazon. As we all know, Amazon owns everything, So I went there and realized it would cost me nothing to put up a few pages for audition. Oh. And yeah, it costs nothing, right? You just say,
When you
Here's
say
4
nothing,
or
do you
5.
mean literally nothing, or is
Right,
there
right. You just
something?
post a few pages, and well, let's get back for a second. So the first step for anyone is to write a good, solid book.
Right.
Okay, this means that you get the great premise, you get the big idea, whatever like this. You go through the process of writing it, that's its own thing. We're not talking about that today, but that's, the writing process. And then you better edit very carefully, because you will find that when someone reads your book out loud, every mistake is glaring. It is so obvious. Bad sentence construction, missing words, things like that, and I'm guilty of all of those. So even if it's just the monotone computer voice reading back to you, you can really check yourself. So let's say now, that's the first step, getting the book ready to go and everything like this. So then the fun part for me was going and getting auditions on acx.com. So
I would imagine, just a thought while you're, I would imagine the people who are auditioning also want to see that your book is well written.
Absolutely. And think of those readers. Yeah, if they listen to one of your books and it's beautifully read but terrible, they are not coming back.
Yeah, and I would imagine if you want to attract the good speakers, they're going to pick you as much as you're picking them.
That's absolutely true. That's right. So you fill out a little short questionnaire. And for me, I put that I wanted, like voice, gender, accent, this kind of thing. So I put that I wanted a male voice with a Southern British accent. And then you include a small sample. I'm sorry?
That's very specific. I didn't know there was a difference.
Oh, yes. We don't want like Wells or Worcester or whatever,
okay, fair enough.
Irish, whatever. Okay,
crazy ones. Just kidding.
And London accent is slightly different from Southern British. But anyways, so I just put it out there, and it, like I say, that's no charge. I got back 23 auditions. Wow. 23 readers read it, yeah. And I started going through and listening to them, and some of them were pretty good. Some of them were terrible. I don't even know why they fancied themselves, an audiobook reader or whatever. And but some of them had very heavy accents. They were not Southern British, So if you want that accent,
American, and you wouldn't notice. But
it was like from other countries, like this. And it was so obvious. Yeah, it was so obvious, But anyway, so it came down to 3 that were very good, and everything like this. And I started corresponding with each of them. I read their bio. I listened to other things they had recorded, because most of the time you can go to an audiobook and you can hear a few minutes sample of them reading the book, which is really nice, because here's someone else's book and here's how they sound reading that, There was a young man who had just an American accent, but he had such great energy that I got with, I communicated with him and told him, look, I'm not going to pick you because I want a Southern British accent on this one, but I'm keeping your name and your contact information, and I'm going to let you know when I have another book that might need an American accent like this. But there was one of the readers that just stood head and shoulders above everyone else. And I complimented him, and I said, you seem to have just an uncanny understanding of these characters. You seem to know their whole trajectory as a character. And he goes, well, frankly, he said, I like the audition piece you put up there so much that I went and got the ebook and read it the night before I came in and did the audition.
Wow.
So he did know the whole story, and he did know what these characters were up to, and every single character he read had their own voice and personality and everything. It's just wonderful. And his name is Hannibal Hills. And he's a Brit living in North Carolina. And and I have to say, he's not a narrator, he's a voice actor.
Okay.
And when you really think about it, that's really what you want.
Right.
You want someone who's going to act out the part.
Right.
Most.
I'm hoping to get his contact information so I can interview him as well. You've mentioned that, and I was like,
right, and he would certainly do that, and he's wonderful to listen to on or off, But this is a performance that someone's going to do, and in general, there are going to be no sound effects. There's going to be no, wind blowing or, other voices. It's not going to be a full cast production. It's going to be one person reading your voice. So can they read? Sorry.
No, I was just thinking, I have heard books that actually have been read by the author and it's monotone and like this. I just couldn't get through it because the voice does make a big difference.
Well, and Stephen King read all of his books at first. He did all the audiobooks by him were his voice at first. And what he kind of learned over time is that not everybody wants to listen to that Maine accent, Yeah. and this is a question you asked me, which we'll get into later. Then he found out the difference between a truly trained voice actor reading your book. And there's a huge difference, So to encapsulate, you write a strong story, you edit it completely, you put up a piece for audition. And I urge all authors to just try it at least once. Just put up a few pages and see what comes back. Because it's amazing to hear your stuff being read by someone who's trying to interpret it or doesn't have any real interest in it or, like this. And you find somebody who really cares about your project, who is a voice actor or actress, and I guess we don't say actress anymore, but you know what I mean. And they will do a great job on it. And up to that point, there's been no cost.
Is there now, or is there?
Well, no, I mean, to that point in the process.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no cost. Oh. So now that you've selected the reader, which actually he's referred to by ACX as the producer, because that person is responsible for taking it all the way through the production cycle, making sure that it will pass the quality test that ACX does, and also Audible.com does their own point. And it's things like spikes on the mic and, modulating the sound within certain, levels and this kind of thing. Yeah. So there's a technical aspect to this that is also another reason that you want a pro to do it. You want somebody that's experienced, not somebody that's just kind of standing in their kitchen reading it. Right. It's just not going to work. So if you want to go on into the financial part of it, this is when the money part comes in. So first you got to know, first and foremost, you have to know that ACX/Audible.com, and I guess it's Audible really, they're going to keep 60% of the profits. Okay? That's just...
I suppose they set everything up for you to do this, but that's a lot.
Yep. So whereas on an ebook, I keep 70%, on an audiobook, 40%.
Wow.
Okay? And they're the big gorilla in the room, so they kind of set that and that's it. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to know, There are some other services, we can talk about it later, that offer a little bit better percentage and everything, but they're much smaller, they don't have the distribution,
right.
And they sure don't have Amazon's distribution.
Right. Yeah,
so
needs to take down that monster. I would like to see a competitor at least.
Yeah, that's a better way to say it. Competitive. I don't want to get rid of.
They seem that's true. They have a lot of good services, but right. I would like to see a competitor, but someday.
Exactly. So there are 3 ways that you can make an agreement with your producer/voice actor. Okay. The first is pay per finished hour. Okay. So let me just say, so pay per finished hour, royalty share, and royalty share plus. So pay per hour is just like that. You pay for the complete production. The voice actor will send you you send them the whole book, and then they will send you about the first 10 or 15 minutes of it. and then they will go ahead and complete the production on it. You pay them in full.
How do you determine how long it takes?
Right. So the cost generally, it varies, of course, by length,
Right.
and everything. But generally speaking, the cost is about $49 an hour, $50 an hour, something like that per finished hour.
Oh, perfect.
So
Okay.
so a 250-page book might be about a 6-hour-long recording, which would cost about $350, somewhere in there.
Okay, 250 pages.
Right.
I'm thinking words.
And then you own that. I mean, anytime that you do this, you as the author, as long as you own the worldwide rights on your book, you own that whole production recording. Okay. You're the owner of it. You can take pieces of it and put it on your website. You can do anything you want to with it. It's yours. Okay. I mean, I don't know if a lawyer is going to say, wait a minute, you can't do everything, but I'm not a lawyer, so.
That was your interpretation.
That's my interpretation, right. And I was actually very surprised to find that out because, you have this voice actor who's done this performance. I thought they might own part of this performance, but they don't. You own it all. So, and then... I
like the option, to tell you the truth.
That's kind of good, yeah. So
it's not always the best option, but if you have several books and it's going to be years before you take it down, it's not a bad option.
Right, and actually, there are a lot of the kind of the voice actors I'll say actor, okay, that are just getting started. A lot of them will do that kind of thing because they get paid up front. So if your book never sells a copy, your audiobook never sells a copy, they got paid. Yeah. So that makes sense.
Oh, for them, yeah. For you, that sucks.
And then you'll keep 40%. You'll keep the 40%. Yeah. Okay? Now the second is royalty share. Royalty share is the agreement you go into with this voice actor producer where you're going to take that 40% and you're going to split it 50-50. 20% will be your cut, 20% will be theirs. And that royalty share agreement lasts 7 years. So, and then I think at the end of that, it reverts all to you, after 7 years. I believe that's how it works, unless you make an extended agreement with them.
Okay.
So in that case, there are no upfront costs. You don't pay them anything initially. They send you the first 10-minute kind of rush, Hannibal was much more pliable and worked with me a lot more. He would send me he would start posting every chapter so I could listen to every chapter. And that was wonderful because if there's a mispronounced word or a name that's kind of oddball that, you wrote it and forgot to tell him. Now, the truth is, when we made our deal, I sent him a sheet of what I thought, just a list of characters and what I thought each voice should be like. And he said almost no one ever does that for him. Oh. And he's recorded something like 50 audiobooks, or he's at least getting close to 50 if it's not 50 already.
Oh, wow.
So he has done a lot of these, and they're beautiful, very professional performances, and of course productions, because he does all the technical aspect of it as well.
That's a nice tip, though, for the author who wants to produce this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really smart thing to do. Just list all your characters and then say, she's got this southern twang to her voice, and he's the cat, and he's going to be the scoundrel of the story, and all of this. Of course, by the time the person reads, they understand your story very well. That's the only way they're ever going to read it correctly anyway. Right. And then the last one is royalty share plus. Any of your experienced readers like Hannibal and others are going to want some money up front. Now, in my way of thinking, most of them ask for very little, like $150, $200 or whatever, which to me, for that kind of performance and no guarantee of sales, it's pretty excellent,
Yeah, and it's
a
more
great
of a
deal.
set price than not knowing how long your book is going to is how many set hours it's going to take to.
That's true. Although they can look at a book and the word count and the pages and pretty well estimate how long it's going to take.
Oh, okay.
And you've got to remember too that they're going to read for dramatic sense. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to read it as fast as they can go, so it only costs you $300 or whatever. They're going to read it dramatically, and so it's going to be, and they'll also read the beginning of a story quite slowly and the end of a story quite slowly, and a lot of times they'll slow down near the end of a chapter, and it's for drama, and it's so that the reader takes it in very carefully, and as carefully as we craft the end of a chapter, we love it when they read it beautifully like that.
Right.
And I mean, I've just blown away so many times by how can I listen to something 16 times and still laugh at my own joke? I mean, come on, I'll be sitting in my car and I'll be running one of my books, which I do, whatever. It sounds a little bit, but I do. And I will just burst out laughing at something because he reads it perfectly, and that's what you want. You want to find a reader who's going to give it that time and energy, And you would ask, like, why I didn't use my own voice. And, I've been in theater and I've done dramatic readings and I've done a lot of this kind of thing or whatever. And I probably could read my own work and everything. But when I heard him read and others, read other, because I listen to a ton of audiobooks. And when I hear these really experienced, trained readers read this, I know, I could do it, but I would need to take that kind of instruction again. I've been out of theater for a long time. I would love to have a director listen to my voice, and if I wanted to do all of that and get ready to go, then that would be my other hobby. I would be a book reader, a voice actor,
Yeah. That seems to be the in thing lately, too. I've been getting a lot of ads for that, but it could be because, people are picking up when I was emailing you.
Well, that's true. You know how they go.
Yeah.
But there are some very good articles and audiobooks and YouTube videos on how to set up your own studio. So, I mean, even if you and as a matter of fact, some of the libraries, if you're in this area, Brambleton Library has a recording studio that you can actually book hours on. You can book time in, go in there, and with very professional equipment, try it and see what it comes out sounding like and everything.
Spring has one too.
Is that what it is? Okay, okay.
Yeah. So
that is a great opportunity so you don't invest thousands of dollars or even hundreds of dollars in a home studio and find out that, I'm not really that good, or I'm going to need some, direction and lessons and this kind of thing.
What was the question I had? Oh, so when you hire these voice actors, this is an assumption, but you never assume, they have their own equipment. To record all this, you don't have to provide any of it.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. And then I was curious, did you find have you made your money back at that? Well, no, you went with the 50-50 split one, right?
And now all of the ones that are really experienced will want royalty share plus. They will want some money up front. So,
which makes sense. They get some skin in the game, and then there's a reason for them to do it, but they also have... And what percentage do they get with the plus?
Royalty share and royalty share plus is the same royalty share, which is you're splitting the 40%.
But for the plus, it's for a shorter period of time?
Plus just means plus some upfront costs. So you're going to pay them something up front, and then you're still going to have the royalty share agreement the same way for 7 years, 20% each, that kind of thing.
Why would you pick plus over regular?
Well, the experienced ones actually require it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because too many times probably they've recorded books that sold 10 copies and they just never make any of their expenses back.
Right.
And, this is a performance. I mean, this is... Yeah. When you hear a good performance of your story, you'll know the difference,
Yeah. Like I said, I heard Hannibal speak on yours, and I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I counted the other day.
See them acting.
In chapter 13 of The Little Ship of Horrors, excuse me, in chapter 13, Hannibal does, I think, 7 voices.
Oh,
So
wow.
seven different characters in one chapter.
Wow.
And, when you're writing a story, you're not sitting there counting. You're just telling your story,
Just to keep track of those voices, I'm
Every voice is different.
Yeah.
Every voice, as a matter of fact, is not just different. Each of those characters has a personality. He knows how to make it sound like that's the personality of this person.
Yeah, that's a professional.
Yeah. Even if we just walk in and say, Captain, you have a call, or whatever, that character's got a personality, even the walk-ons.
I listen to books on tapes, and the difference between a good recording and, like I said earlier, the one was the author who, and she talked like this, and I was like, it was somewhat.
Are we excited yet?
Yeah, I know. She's like, I am reading my book. It wasn't that bad, but it was. I couldn't get through it.
Right.
I didn't like it, so
So in answer to your question, my sales aren't anything like what they're gonna be, But
they do say once you finish, because you said you have a third book. They say once you finish your set, that's when it usually takes off, which I find interesting.
I've heard a lot of different takes on that. The most common is about 6 books into your I
heard 10.
Yeah, see, so 10, that's fine. But the other thing too is that a series of 3 are considered very small series now. Everybody is writing in series.
I was thinking 10 books you have to have published before people take notice of you. But
that's
a series of 3. Yeah, I don't like it when it's really long series.
Yeah, I know.
That's my opinion.
I read a lot of book ones of a lot of series because I just want to see what the author's doing.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in their premise, and I want to see how they intro their characters and build their world and all that kind of thing. But I'm more of a student of writing. Yeah. I'm also a reader, and I love good books and everything. But not very often do I go ahead and read an entire series. It's just me, And also I read a lot. I have a lot of books going at once. Yeah. And, it might be an audiobook, ebook, a printed book. I'm taking them in from all directions. So a lot of times I'm just really looking at, sort of studying the author. I'm enjoying the book, of course. Hopefully. But it's mainly for the study of, okay, look at this author. Look what their premise is. Look how they build their world and introduce the characters.
I joined a book club recently.
Yeah.
And first of all, we have yet, I say recently, it's been about 6 months, but we have yet to read a series book. We have not. Oh. It's always a standalone book. And I suspect that's true for most book clubs. That's 1. And 2, I have learned as a study of writing. I just to read their type of writing has been fascinating to me. Like I just finished Little Fires Everywhere, which by the way is nothing like the Hulu series. They made it a racial thing on the Hulu series. It's not in the book. It's more socioeconomic. The girl isn't even black, but that's another story. But in 1 page, the author will switch point of view 3 times. No joke. And I followed it. And I know if I took that to one of the writing groups I used to go to, change the point of view. Yes. And it was like, she did it. She's a big time publisher. I'm an author. So that was one of the reasons why I stopped going to writing groups. Some of them were there were too many amateur writers in there. But that's another story. But yes, I find reading. I always tell authors read, because I've also been to writing groups where I'll ask, okay, what are you reading? And I don't have time to read.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a slow reader, and I still find time to read. But I did actually a video about that, complaining about how I had them do that. And not only that, I had found as the writing group went along that when somebody would say, well, you can't do this, I was like, what are you talking about? I know this book did it, and I know that book. And I was the only one referencing books.
Yes.
That's when
I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
Right.
That's when I knew it was time to leave.
Right. There are a lot of people who say you can never use an adverb, you can never write this, that, whatever,
Stephen King, to be fair, Stephen King did say you can't use an adverb, but I think that when, in his book on writing, it's a good book, by the way. But I think people have taken it a bit far. And as I always point out, read Harry Potter book 1. It is littered with adverbs.
And you know what? It's a wonderful book.
It is a wonderful book. And I never before noticed it had adverbs until I started hearing that.
Right.
Really? Is it that bad? And I opened up the book and I went, no. But I think my theory is, and it's hard to do this as the writer, as long as the reader can follow along and can get lost in the book, that they don't feel like they're reading, then you have a good book.
Oh, yeah.
That's
a good test. I mean, I always feel
it's a hard
like
test to get, though, for some people.
I always feel like if you can read and not realize you've gone so many pages into it, like a very smooth read. Yeah. And the best example to me is Mark Twain.
I have yet to read him. Oh wait, no, I read Tom Sawyer. The Adventures. That was good. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you pick up one of his books, you'll find yourself on page 25 before you even know it.
Yeah, it was.
That is some smooth writing there.
I did read Huck Finn, and I had trouble because he has the accent.
Oh yeah,
and he writes in. So that was the only reason, but yeah. I remember reading Adventures in Tom Sawyer my first year in college, and I remember it being good, and that's why I picked up Huck Finn. But I'll have to go back and look. I enjoy his little quotes to Mark Twain. But
so talking about earnings.
I'm sorry. Yes, I don't.
No, that's okay. So going back to the kind of the business, the financial part of this, or whatever like that. Probably 80% of my earnings right now are coming in through audiobooks, for audiobook sales.
Oh, wow. More than the Kindle or the... No, you
much
never
more.
did print it. FYI, the printing is free.
Well, I know. And I actually have... Part of the very end of this is I have a few announcements as an author.
Okay.
So, and one of them is, and I might as well do it now, that I am going to do finally a printed book. And just got back kind of the very first, not the very first, but what is probably going to be the cover for the book, and then I'm just going to put it in a print-on-demand setup, and people have been asking me to do it for a long time, so finally I'll have a printed book out there, and really with these series, that's where you get into things like box sets.
Yeah.
So. I'm actually a little bit later this year when I get finished with the third book of the Neck of Bashar series. I'm going to put it out in print and in a box set, ebook and ebook in a box set, and then probably audiobook and audiobooks in a box set. So I mean that's a lot of ways to buy it, and people feel like they're getting a much better deal, which they are. They're getting more for their money anyway.
Yeah. Out of curiosity. I remember you writing a story that was more fantasy. Did you ever publish that one?
I can't even think of which one you might be saying. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there are...
It was a NaNoWriMo book.
Oh, okay. So,
I remember enjoying that one, too. And I remember you reading it, and I went, damn, he wrote that during Nano? That's what I write after I edit it.
So that one right there...
The image isn't that great.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can't really see it. So that's...
You know what? Send me a picture.
Yeah.
Send me a picture and I'll put it up.
So that's Tabitha's Triumph.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
And Tabitha's Triumph was a short story that I wrote. Very interesting. When I brought it to writers groups, I had written it with a very dark, tragic ending. Okay? And when writers groups read the very dark, tragic ending, they said, "Oh my gosh, what a great chapter 1." But when I wrote it with a happy ending, kind of like a reconciliation and everything like this, beautiful ending, father loves her and all this stuff kind of thing, people said, "Oh, what a great short story."
Interesting.
So I decided maybe it is a chapter 1. And for NaNoWriMo last year, I wrote the book, Tabitha's Triumph, which actually is the 3rd of an unpublished series. But
okay,
those books are going to take a little work, but that is a fantasy, like what you might call serious fantasy.
Okay.
As opposed to fantasy comedy.
Okay. Yeah. It was 2 different writings. The one I originally heard, I just remember the 3 witches and the tree. I still can imagine it in my head what you wrote, and I was like, wow, I would read that. I'm picky about my books.
I'm thinking about 3 witches and the tree. That might be a different story.
It might be, because
well, anyway.
I didn't do Nano with you this year.
Yeah, no, that's all right. And I think that proves something, though, is that there's this proving ground that you go through as an author. Mm-hmm. And you read a lot and you write a lot. Mm-hmm. And not all of those are going to be good, but you keep going and keep going, keep going. I've written a lot of short stories, and now I've written something like 10 novels, but there's only a few of them that are published. And there's a reason for that. Not all of them are good, or, not all of them are complete, or not all of them even are a satisfying read. Mm-hmm. But that's how you learn. And NaNoWriMo is a great proving ground for, is this idea enough to be book length, to be novel length?
Yeah. Yeah, because some of those people can be very cutthroat in their their explanation. I shouldn't say cutthroat. They weren't really bad, but I think they're a little bit more.
You're talking about writers groups?
Writers groups, I have my opinions about a writers group. I should do a video just on writers groups. I have strong opinions about them, and I think they can be more harmful than helpful if you don't have the right one.
Oh, I've been in terrible ones. Yeah. I've been in ones that were totally personality cults.
Yes.
Everybody was supposed to gather around the great writer and bow.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
And then I was in one, there was a couple running it, and they fought all the time. And they're supposed to lead the group, And so we're all looking at each other like, what are we supposed to do while these people go off on their, tantrums,
I've also heard writing groups where they... what I have always said, when you give your paper up for critique, you will get a critique. Whether it is, The Man in the Sea or, a piece of crap, but anything from great works of art to you will get a critique. They will find something wrong with it.
Well, wait, you mean a criticism? Because critique...
No, a critique. I'm saying they will find grammar that's not really there, or they'll say, why'd you use it? Or like I said, they'll say, you changed point of view here. And it's like, yeah, I meant to. But so I mean a critique. But if you give it to a reader instead of a writer to critique, they'll find less. And if you get a truthful one, they'll say, that was a good story, or it's okay. Once they say it's okay, it's bad. You know what I mean? It's
yes, I do. Right.
Between a reader looking at it and a writer looking at it, a writer gets too analytical sometimes.
Right. And even if it's a beautifully done critique, it's only one person's opinion anyway.
Yes, that's true.
And there is, by the way, a big difference between critique and criticism.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Criticism is only negative.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's the problem I also have with writing groups, and I tried to remind them. They think critique is only negative too, and you have to remind them to point out the good as well as the bad, because
strengths and weaknesses.
You need to know what is working and what is not.
Yeah. I actually took a critique group one time and said, okay, we're just going to talk about everyone's strengths for
that's interesting.
for one meeting.
That's a good idea.
What do you think the strengths are in this piece? And it's the piece. It's not the writer. It's the piece.
That's true.
And so I just want to let you know though that a friend of mine. Yeah, so Michael J. Sullivan, very well-known fantasy author. Mm-hmm. His wife, Robin, is his business manager. Mm-hmm. And she broke it down basically, and he has sales worldwide, thousands of books a month. I mean, he is very well established, one of the top fantasy authors in the world today. And about 47% of his income is coming from audio.
Wow.
It's a massive market. It's a multi-billion-dollar market.
It is, and I keep thinking of doing mine in audio, but I just don't get around to it. I haven't been getting around to anything these days. I've been really busy. But I think you're inspiring me to do this. But
at least get the auditions and just listen to your work being read by someone. Mm-hmm. Even that is just such an inspiring, kind of thrilling experience, And also you'll listen to people and you think you're, I can do better than that.
I didn't even understand that.
It is worth mentioning that there are other outlets, and one of the big ones is Chirp, CHIRP, Chirp. And I believe, I hope I've got this right, their production company, like ACX is the production company for Audible.com. Mm-hmm. So Chirp is the outlet, the retail outlet, and Findaway Voices, Findaway being all one word, Findaway Voices, I believe, is their technical production end. That's where you would go in, I believe, and put up pieces for audition and make the deal with the reader, producer, and all that. Obviously, they don't have the distribution that Amazon / Audible has, but the deal is a little better in terms of your profit, in terms of the profit that you keep, and it's a new market. It's at least some competition for Audible.
I think Audible is very popular. People are listening to books in their cars more than the news these days, and radio is almost out the window. That they're listening to books and to podcasts a lot more. No, I agree. So when is your book being released? The Little Ship of Horrors?
So here's my author announcements.
Oh, yay!
Now I've actually kind of gone ahead and told you all of them, really, which is that Little Ship of Horrors audiobook is out right now. And I think I'm going to release a print-on-demand, printed copy, basically. It could be within a month, I think, maybe less. I mean, I'm just steaming ahead with that idea just to see how it does, which a lot of people are going to be, they're going to like that idea anyway. So, and then
I put mine in print, and that one sold better than the Kindle.
So. I've gotten so used to reading things electronically and also, like I said, one of my things was, and this was a few years ago, is that I wanted to go to print as cheaply as possible, and at that time, print on demand was coming on. In fact, it was probably just my ignorance that I didn't realize I could get started there pretty inexpensively. Yeah. And then I didn't know how to design
to put it together.
I didn't know how to design a cover, the back cover, the spine, and all of that.
How to have formatted properly, and
Right. So, but I would say, and then I'm going to work on this fantasy series, and I have to decide really which way to jump because it's a lot of work, and we're talking about 3 novels at once almost, to put it all together. But whatever, we'll see. But the one thing I want to say though to writers that are, part of your group and everything like that, is that you can use this, like I consider visualizing success one of the most important things in terms of keeping my mind right about writing and all this stuff. I mean, you have to be your own biggest fan, and I don't mean in an egotistical way. I mean, you have to believe, and I do all kinds of things. I make book covers before the book is done. I do T-shirts, that I wear around the house or
By the way,
whatever.
I love the T-shirt. Yes, very nice.
And I just do these kind of things. Let's see where. I don't see where my notebook is here, but I do like notebook covers. Here it is. So. I ordered a little Vistaprint notebook cover.
Wow.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah,
and it's a blank book. I do all my, scribbling in. And then it also has Tabitha's Triumph.
Oh, wow.
And I do things like this to inspire myself. But one of the biggest inspirations you'll ever get is to hear a great reader reading your story and having a book out there in Audible and going, man, I am a real author now. Boy, look at this, But even just hearing the audition, like I said, can be really inspiring and a lot of fun. So it's definitely worth just putting it out there.
Well, thank you, Vee, for taking your time and sharing all your knowledge about the audio business. That is a bit scary for just writing a book is scary. But I appreciate you taking the time this morning.
Yep. Well, take care, Joanne. See you soon. Roger says hi.